Pull up a stool. I told you I'd get back to this story. Vienna. November 1987, 2 months after Café Central. I hadn't seen Orlova since the platform at the Westbahnhof. I'd assumed that was the end of it, two professionals who'd crossed paths on an operation that closed out clean, moving on to the next assignment the way you're supposed to. Then Langley called me back to Vienna with a different problem entirely. And the first person I saw when I stepped off the train was her. Neither of us had requested this. I want to be clear about that. A West German businessman named Brandt had gone missing 11 days earlier, officially a private citizen, unofficially a conduit both Washington and Moscow used when they needed to move information without either government's fingerprints on it. Deniable back channel, the kind of man both sides needed, alive and neither side could be seen protecting. Someone had taken him. Neither the CIA nor the KGB had done it, which meant a third party had. And a third party operating in Vienna, snatching a man both superpowers depended on, was a problem bigger than the Cold War itself for about the next 72 hours. I got the call at 0600. Orlova, I'd learn later, got hers at 0620. We arrived at the same safe house within an hour of each other, not because anyone planned it that way, but because there were only so many buildings in Vienna, both our services considered secure, and this crisis had burned through the polite fiction that we operated in separate worlds. She looked at me across that room the way you look at a problem you were hoping wouldn't show up. She said, "Of all the officers Langley could have sent." I said, "I could say the same about Moscow." She said, "This is not an alliance, Mr. Harrington." I said, "I didn't say it was." She said, "We exchange what we must to find Brandt and nothing more. When this is finished, we go back to being what we were." I said, "And what were we exactly?" She didn't answer that. I noticed she didn't answer that. Here's the part that still surprises me when I think back on it. Working with her was easier than working against her had been. She was methodical in a way I respected. Immediately, she'd already mapped every organization in Vienna with the resources and motive to grab a man like Brandt, cross-referenced against known safe houses, financial movements, anyone who'd recently needed leverage over both Washington and Moscow simultaneously. I had informant networks she didn't. She had access to Eastern Bloc chatter I couldn't touch. Neither of us said it out loud, but within 6 hours, we both understood we'd find him faster together than either of us would alone. We narrowed it to 3 groups by midnight. By 0200, cross-referencing a financial transfer she'd flagged against a property lease my people had found. We had a location, a warehouse near the Danube Canal, leased under a shell company with ties to a Croatian smuggling operation that had apparently decided kidnapping a superpower's favorite back channel was a viable business plan. Ambitious, stupid, extremely dangerous for Brandt. We went in together at 0430. That wasn't standard protocol for either service. A joint operation, off the books, coordinated entirely on trust. Neither of us had officially earned from the other, but there wasn't time to run it any other way, and both of us knew it. I won't walk you through every minute of that warehouse. It went the way these things go when the people holding the hostage realize their leverage is about to disappear. Fast, loud, over quicker than it should have felt in the moment. Brandt was alive. Frightened, roughed up, but alive. The Croatians hadn't expected an American and a Soviet officer moving in perfect coordination through the same building, and that confusion bought us the 2 minutes we needed. Afterward, standing in the cold by the canal while Brandt was extracted through separate channels neither side would ever officially discuss, Orlova looked at me for a long moment. She said, "That should not have worked." I said, "But it did." She said, "Do not mistake this for something it is not." I said, "I'm not mistaking anything." She said, "Good, because tomorrow I go back to being your enemy and you go back to being mine." I said, "I understand." She started to walk away, stopped, turned back. She said, "Harrington, thank you." Then she was gone into the dark, And I stood there by that canal a long time before I found my own way back. I flew out of Vienna 2 days later. Officially, the operation was a success. Brandt recovered. The Croatian operation dismantled through channels that never mentioned KGB involvement. Both governments satisfied their asset was safe. Unofficially, I kept thinking about a woman who'd said thank you like it cost her something to say it. I told myself it didn't mean anything. I was getting worse at believing myself every time I said that. The fiction is the shield. The truth is in the pages. See you beyond the great filter.